What's up, guys? We are back with another Super 7 review, taking a look at the first in the G.I. Joe subline of Super Cyborg figures. So this is Super 7's 11-inch, very vintage-inspired, Japanese-inspired Cyborg figures. So things like Henshin Cyborg, if that rings a bell for anybody out there. So these are larger figures with limited articulation that play off the idea of being able to see what's inside the figure, kind of all the working, moving parts if this was a real Cyborg. So very interesting stuff, something I've really wanted to take a look at. And this is brand spanking new, so we're getting a first look on this guy. We do have some very vintage-inspired packaging, so a very vintage-inspired packaging just in a general sense, but also in terms of its aesthetics for G.I. Joe. So you've got, the G.I. Joe logo up top, we've got the big window, we've got the vintage style artwork in the corner. One side panel of the box has a file card, just like the vintage G.I. Joe figures. We've got a layout of all the stuff this guy comes with. We do have instructions on the other side to show you how to remove pieces and take the chest off, and then the back showcases all the features of the COBRA Bat in terms of all of his parts, what he does, how he moves, and things like that, giving it a very vintage-inspired layout, look, and feel. So I love everything about this packaging. Point blank, I would love to not have to take this guy out, but we're going to do it. So let's pull this guy out and take a look. And here he is out of the package, our Super Cyborg COBRA Bat. The first in the G.I. Joe subline when it comes to Super Cyborg stuff. So we've got Transformers from Super 7 already, and now we've got G.I. Joe. And this guy, I think, is among the better options to have used for the first figure, because the whole idea of the Super Cyborg stuff plays off the removable chest feature, the see-through windows in many instances, and that is, that's basically what the Bat did anyway. So it works really well as a first foray into Joe stuff for this line. This guy was provided for review by Super 7. Let's just get that out of the way now, but let's get started, take a look, see what this guy can do. He is, of course, very different from what I normally take a look at. We're not talking about a 6 or 7 inch super articulated figure. This is a very minimally articulated 11-inch figure. So it is very much its own thing, and we're going to consider it that. It's not something that I'm comparing to a normal action figure. So as far as moving him around, you've got a swiveling head, you've got rotating arms at the shoulder, you've got rotating wrists, and then you've got rotating ankles. That's it. That's where we start and stop when it comes to articulation. He basically just stands around, and then you can use his arms to position him to showcase some of his weaponry, which we'll talk about in a bit. I think that's fine as far as how the figure itself works. Again, it's playing off of a very specific theme when it comes to a vintage approach to these larger scale toys. I like it. I think it looks really nice as a backdrop piece, or of course its own thing when you line up a bunch of Super Cyborgs together. The form factor works, and then it's just kind of a nostalgic throwback to different kinds of figures and very much a Japanese style figure when it comes to this articulation scheme. So he doesn't do a great deal, but at the same time, he's doing exactly what he's supposed to. Aesthetically, I think this guy is pretty impressive though, and that's really where my main focus for this entire line lies, is how they look, because they do of course have a specific kind of form factor. They are not covered in detail. There's not a bunch of texture all over these figures. This guy is very much just sort of like a mirror gloss finish when it comes to the presentation. So all of that black is very flat, and it does kind of give off that vintage vibe, which I do like. It looks really nice when you have it in hand. I have looked at pictures and images of the Transformer line for quite a while now, and it wasn't until I got this thing in hand that I realized exactly what I was going to be dealing with. So it is a pretty cool looking figure. There is a decent amount of detail on him though. You've got all of the hallmarks of the classic kind of version 1 Bat figure, because it is based off the Bat figure from the vintage G.I. Joe line. So you've got things like the belt, which does have paint applications on it. You've got his gun, that's of course sculpted into the holster, and then you've got his sort of almost like fireman style boots down there. The wrists and the hands are really well done. They are super bright when you get them under the right kind of light, so they'll just light up like a beacon because they have a nice metallic finish as far as that paint. He does have the backpack, which I believe that was a removable piece in the vintage line. I didn't collect G.I. Joes as a kid. I've mentioned that a number of times, so I don't have any to really compare against, but this was a removable piece, I believe. This is sculpted on though, and then it's got all of his various attachments as far as accessories goes that you can store in there. The black, yellow, and sort of silver color scheme I think really works. It plays really nicely into the vintage aspect of it because there's a really small color palette until you get within the chest. And he looks really good. This is basically just a massive scaled up version of that original figure, and the head sculpt kind of tops it off with that silver faceplate and the fin that runs across the top of the head and those sort of flared out fringes of the helmet. It's a really cool design that frankly translates really, really well into this just because of the fact that the Bat was this type of thing to begin with, an android with a see-through chest and all of his doodads and parts showing through that window, and it works really nicely as a first figure here. And speaking of that chest, that's definitely one of the things with this line. So they have removable parts to showcase sort of the cyborg nature within. So you can pop the chest off and you've got all of his innards there, all of his cyborg doodads and whatchamacallits all inside there. So all sorts of various contraptions, tons of paint applications in here. There's definitely more going on inside this figure as far as paint goes than outside. So you can sort of see all of the connections. So, you know, here's the shoulder connection, here's the leg connection, and then there's all these mechanisms and gears that make the Bat do what the Bat does. Of course, he does have, you know, the translucent shield basically that sits across his chest, which I really like, and this thing is incredibly clear, so you can see right through it. It may attract some fingerprints, but it looks really, really good, and there's just so much detail packed into this. There's all sorts of just techno stuff crammed into the chest cavity on this guy, and of course, all of that is highlighted by a very neon color palette, and it just sort of screams vintage 80s kind of stuff to me with how these colors are applied. So I really do like all this stuff, and it's super easy to use. So you just pop it back on and then you're good to go. Now, as far as accessories goes, the Bat does have a couple, well, 3 really, and I've already sort of touched on them because they do store in the backpack here. So you've got the claw arm, you've got the laser, the blaster, and then this was a flamethrower, I think, right? Someone will undoubtedly let me know if I'm wrong, but these are to be used in conjunction with the removable hands. So this is one of the points of articulation. You've got a swiveling hand, but you can pop these off, and then you can take these off his backpack and pop them onto the hand. They are kind of snug, but I'd prefer them to be too tight than to be too loose so they're not popping off and falling all over the place. You can put one of these in his backpack and then have 2 weapons in there at the same time, but it's really hard to get both of the hands stored back there. I don't really expect that's intended. So you've got storage for the 3 weapons, and then you've got the hands floating out there if you want to use them elsewhere. So you can have, you know, a combination of hand and a weapon, or you can do 2 weapons or 2 hands. I do like the idea of just being able to have these. I love weapon storage when it comes to figures, so that's kind of cool as well. But this looks, I mean, it's kind of a goofy thing as far as Android, Cyborg stuff to have interchangeable parts for hands and different weapons and stuff, so I do like that. It's kind of a very classic feel when it comes to this kind of thing. So there's the blaster, and of course these are all done up in that same kind of silver metallic color that the hands are, so they are incredibly shiny and lustrous under the right conditions, although they're pretty metallic every other way anyway. So you've got your flamethrower, torch, or mystery weapon if I happen to be wrong. So he does have 3 accessories and pretty much everything he needs to kind of complete the package when it comes to that vintage Bat look. And so, yeah, this thing's pretty cool. I know this is definitely different when it comes to the stuff that I talk about on the channel, and it's definitely different for folks who are more into just normal 6-inch stuff. This guy is also much, much more expensive, so we're talking about a more niche product, something that is not for everyone, but I think folks that are interested in something a little bit more different, a little bit more unique for G.I. Joe, this is right up your alley. People that like vintage-style Japanese toys like this, whether it's G.I. Joe or not, are also going to be particularly interested. And I think Super7 did a really good job here. This is not even necessarily something that I would consider my thing, but at the same time, I have been really curious about this line ever since I heard about it. And I think it's a pretty fun line. It's definitely for a certain type of collector, but at the same time, it's really well done, and it feels great, it looks great, and it has a couple fun play features as well. So that's going to do it for this look at the Super7 Super Cyborg G.I. Joe Cobra Bat. That is a mouthful. Let me know what you guys think. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and share, and until next time.